Maybe this is this Digimon universe's version of reincarnation. They get revived inside of Sephirothmon, and they just killed all of them again.
Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move
Run,
on.
run, run, run. Welcome to Podagus, your friendly, eight-legged dog bus companion through the 2020 Digimon Adventure reboot. This week, we're discussing episode 46, The Sword of Hope. I'm your host, Jeff Ruberg, and for my guest this week, it's my boyfriend and self-professed Takeru stan, Erik.
Hello.
So, I have one pressing question for you. Why do you like Takeru? How and why?
Because he's the best. I think I liked him probably more during the original adventure. Because at that time I was also a younger brother. I mean, I still am, except.
Yeah.
Well, let me explain. So at the time, I only had an older brother, so I was more of the TK, and my brother was the Matt. But since then, I now have a younger sister, and so now I feel like the older brother. So now I feel more like Matt. So I like both of them.
Wow. Well, it's been awkward timing the last two times that you came on the show because I think, at least for the last one, it was like, oh, okay, it doesn't seem there's going to be any Takeru episode in sight. And then literally the week after, it was a Takeru. I think that time we like prepared to have you on and then watched the episode and then the ending teaser at the end of the episode was like, next week, clearly Takeru. And it was like, oh crap.
Yeah, they keep messing us up.
But this time lines up.
Yes.
So last time you were on was episode 40, the Sora soccer episode. So what have you been thinking about the show in general since then?
Oh wow, that seems like a while ago.
It seems like a while ago, but it was only 6 weeks.
What has happened since then? So that was with they were gonna eat the Digimon. They turned into fruit, right?
Yeah, they were going to, and then Agumon insisted they didn't, but
And
they
then what
totally
happened
did.
after? We got
And it's all been a bunch of episodic stuff. There was the like,
we got Anjuman's return, right?
yeah, the amusement park, the garbage dump.
And then my favorite episode, the Edamon one, which even though I hate Edamon with a passion, I think that's been my favorite episode so far because everyone was just so goofy and really just acting differently than they normally do. So it was very refreshing to see. It was very funny. So far I've liked the episode since then. But that would be my favorite.
Yeah, that episode was tons of fun. I feel bad though that it makes everything else around it seem lackluster in comparison.
I mean, they were also good, just not as good as that one episode.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a list of episodes because I'm like, I feel like we skipped over. Oh, yeah, I guess there was that giant Hikari bonds of the giant tree episode and
Oh yes.
the motorcycle, the suicidal motorcycle addicted to steroids.
I thought the Mel Garurumon episode was good. The Kari one, it was all right. I can't feel like the events were kind of happening around them, not to them. Like she just happened to be there. Angela happened to just power up the giant forest that the Digimon didn't know they were living on at the very end. So they kind of were just bystanders for that episode, I feel like.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's been pretty good.
Well, on that note, let's jump on a Commandamon and dive into this week's episode 46, The Sword of Hope, aka Montero, Call Me By Your Angemon, aka Partially Angemon Becomes Wholly Angemon, aka Veni Veni Venias, Ne Memori Facias, Veni Veni Venias, Ne Memori Facias. Sophie Rothman, Sophie Rothman. Sorry, that was my rendition of the title of this episode, Eight Winged Angel. So
Oh, is that what that was?
I'm going to debut it on Spotify next week, so stay tuned. Oh, now that awkward Jeff Sings segment part of the show is over.
Would that be added to the beginning of the episodes?
Oh God, don't even mention that cursed idea. Anyway, spoiler policy, like always, we talk about everything in the Crunchyroll episode, including the title and preview for next week, and everything in Original Adventure, and we'll give you a fair warning if we talk about anything from late stage plot reveals of other Digimon seasons. But this week I think is going to be pretty tricky actually to not talk about the batch of titles and synopses past next week, especially given some of the questions we got. So I think we're probably going to keep the main episode spoiler free, and then at the very, very end of the show, yeah, okay, now we've all seen the titles, let's discuss in context of that. We might have to awkwardly skip past some things and be like, no comment, come back at the end of the show.
And you'll have to fill me in because I think you and I we're about to discuss the titles, but you never actually told me what the titles were.
Yeah, so you haven't seen them yet. I'll show them to you before we get to that segment.
We'll give live reactions then.
Yeah. All right, so what happened this week? Joe starts to get Commandamon sick, looks outside and notices Sephirothmon in the sky. Sephirothmon then sucks up all of the important characters, leaving the unimportant characters to escape. Inside of Sephirothmon, the main boys get attacked by shadows of all the Digimon they've fought before. Outside, Tailmon explains that Sephirothmon is gathering data to revive Millenniumon, and the kids outside attack Sephirothmon, who defends with attacks stolen from the kids inside. Then inside, Devimon appears. Angemon explains how Devimon is just his dark side Heartless, but Devimon insists that it'll always be a part of him. Takeru believes in Angemon, and he evolves to Holy Angemon and tears Sephirothmon apart. And the episode ends with another Sephirothmon orb absorbing the kid's data and flies away to join the other Sephirothmon orbs.
How dare you not include Joe in the main boys? Joe is their leader.
Okay, so the weird thing I noticed about this episode is the way they're split up. It's exactly the divide from our war game, and that's what made me think that it's like, oh, it's
Yes.
the four important characters and then the four generally less important characters for adventure.
Joe has medical tests to study for, so
Yeah, it's not like he has no presence, but it's like the four characters who are often left to just be a punchline or left to the sidelines. But I think this episode sidelines them arguably less than the movie like Our War Game because it's like they're off to the side, but they're doing things when they're off to the side. Like they're not in the orb, but they're outside fighting as well. So like they're not completely, just on the sidelines and ignored. But yeah, what do you think?
I thought it was a good TK episode and expanded upon the Angemon Devimon connection that was hinted at like episodes and episodes ago when they were first talking to each other.
I feel like I've just like how Angemon has lived through several lives and reincarnated. I feel like I've lived through several lives since then. That was like decades ago.
Yeah, that was it was almost a year ago, I think. Oh,
No, it was episode 30 or so. That's
really?
like 4 months.
Okay. Well, it feels much longer. But I like that they touched on that, so I thought that part was good. But besides that, I don't know if I would say like a lot of interesting stuff happened. Like the other three characters locked inside the eyeball were kind of just fighting phantoms, and it seemed like they were winning easily, but still digivolving to get stronger for no reason.
Yeah, it seemed like they were like, "Oh my god, this Digimon's so threatening. Oh my god, we need to Digivolve." And then it's like, "Oh, they just tear through them without any struggle." And then I think Kosher at one point comments like, "I can't tell if they're strong or not." And it's like, great data analysis there,
Yeah, you're
buddy.
like one-shotting them all,
Yeah.
so I don't get why we're suddenly going to ultimate.
I actually noted down this time or when I rewatched the episode because at one point I was like, have the Digimon actually attacked them? The shadows, I mean? Because at one point they were just kind of like circling them, like when there's a bunch of Algamon and other various ones. I think when they're like before they've Digivolved to Ultimate, definitely maybe when they're just champion. And I was like, are they just decimating these shadows without ever being attacked? And they do. I think like a Tankmon does shoot at them before that point, but like, and I think eventually they start charging at them. So okay, they are in self defense. They're not just ruthlessly murdering all these Digimon or shadows of Digimon. But
I mean, they could have been running towards them to be like, "Hey, we
hi, we
forgive
just want
you
to
for
hug.
like murdering us. You didn't know that like there's such thing as reincarnation, but you still murdered us. It's okay. Let's put this. Hey, what are you doing? Wait, stop that. Stop it. Oh no!" And then they're dead.
Maybe this is this Digimon universe's version of reincarnation. They get revived inside of Sephirothmon,
Yeah.
and they just killed all of them.
Yep.
Again, I thought when I think it's when Sneemon attacks, and I had forgotten that Sneemon was even in this series. I think he was in the when Sora debuted, like when she met Piomon and Birdmon appeared. I think Sneemon was in that episode
Like the first episode of
post COVID.
yes, and when the first episode like inside the digital world proper.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Sneemon was in that episode, but I didn't remember like when Sneemon appeared and Taichi said Sneemon's name. I was like, how do you remember Sneemon's name? I don't buy for a second that these kids actually remember all these names of all these Digimon they've ruthlessly murdered. I don't think so.
I they may. I mean, what else have they to think about? They're not thinking about Millennium on because we've gone 10 episodes and they're still like just playing with their dog car.
I was gonna say it's like when RuPaul sees contestants from RuPaul's Drag Race, and it's like there's no way she can remember all the names.
Which season is she on?
But I think overall it was a fine episode. Like I feel like the stuff leading up to, especially rewatching the episode, it became clear that it's like there's everything leading up to the Takeru and Angemon versus Devimon encounter, and then there's just that encounter, and it's like they're very kind of isolated, and then it's like this thing happens, and then that solves the problem, and it's like okay, well, but I think it was a neat idea for a setup for an episode, but yeah, like you're saying, the fighting that happens before the actual Angemon versus Devimon encounter was very dull, which is feels like a shame to say when it's like they were bringing back all these Digimon and like referencing previous events of the series. For it to feel so shallow is a little disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on them showing like, oh, what is the I Digimon?
Sephirothmon, like like iconic video game character Sephiroth,
So I think them like dropping like, oh,
long sword,
Seth when
long hair,
I think them saying that Sephirothmon
one wing,
like goes around collecting data.
one winged angel.
I think the point of that is that's going to come back later to explain why Millennium Mon
Has a big crush on Cloud Strife.
looks like Machine Dramon and Chimeramon together. So I think that's the whole point of that. Because otherwise, this episode, if they didn't need that to like fill in for a few in episodes down the road, probably like 15, when Millennium Mon like they actually show up to Millennium Mon store. If they didn't need that, they could have just had TK get captured, had the phantoms like surrounding them just watching this fight or him fighting them and having to like digivolve to Pegasusmon and then like de-digivolving and then having to go to Angemon, fight Devimon, and then go to Ultimate. Like all that could happen without the other three, but they needed that Machine Dramon and all the Chimeramon parts for some reason.
I mean,
Otherwise, it doesn't make
yeah.
any sense.
I mean, I think it makes sense in that they wanted. I think it was a kind of compelling kernel of an idea that like they're inside fighting, and then the kids outside are also trying to fight, but then their Sephirothman is using the attacks from the kids inside. Like that's a cool kind of like, oh no, they're fighting inside, but actually they're the whole time they're getting their powers absorbed. Like, and then you see the kids outside trying to fight, and if it was just, I think if it was just Takeru inside, that wouldn't have had that compelling like the two sides both fighting and being kind of feudal thing until randomly Holy Digimon just apparently is the one Digimon that can take down this thing completely. But I think the main interesting thing about this episode is that it reframes. I mean, it's like I guess it's a big plot twist. The idea that Devimon was not a separate entity was formed from Angemon after the ancient battle, whatever. Angemon was stuck in a giant pool of miasma for whatever reason, and in that pool, his feathers formed into Devimon. And I think that would have been a really compelling idea to me as a kid. If I had, like you were saying, when you were a kid and you had totally identified with Takeru or TK,
Hmm.
I think if I was a kid and identifying with him, I think I would have really felt the moment where this partner that he's trusted so long actually finding out that Devimon was a part of him would have felt like a huge betrayal and would have made me question things. And then, the moment when Takeru like chooses to believe in him, and despite that, would have felt really emotional. But not being a kid right now, I was like, oh, well, this is kind of okay, interesting twist, but I'm not really sold on the emotion in the moment. Like, it didn't feel particularly well executed, so I kind of. It was kind of a bit of a letdown, but because I think like as a kid I would have found Devimon being formed from Angemon a more interesting idea than like Devimon hunting Takeru and then Angemon forming to defend him like in the original show. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I think this is kind of a cool approach. But that being said, the actual Holy Angemon evolution felt pretty lackluster to me, like especially considering we've recently gotten two episodes focused on Takeru, and like we got like the Pegasusmon episode where basically like I think both of those episodes, the Pegasusmon episode and the amusement park episode with Angemon returning, kind of put a spotlight on Takeru and different meanings of hope. Like the
Hmm.
Pegasusmon episode was about like Angemon reflecting on how Takeru, when he was imprisoned for years or decades, whatever, Takeru was his hope for the future. And the Angemon returning episode was about Takeru giving hope to a bunch of random Digimon, like giving hope to the civilians kind of thing. And this episode, in contrast, was just Angemon's turning evil, but Takeru doesn't give up on him. And it's like I can see how that, like is kind of a concept of hope, but it's also just very generic. It's also friendship, it's also courage, it's also like it's also love. It feels very generic and bland and like, oh no, he didn't give up. So
I think it's interesting because it shows how everyone has like a good side and a bad side, or that everything's not good. And I think kids might be able to relate to, like, oh, I did this one bad thing and now that completely defines me. And I think that like it can give them, our buzzword hope. Um, to be able to move beyond that and like accept their mistakes and get stronger from that, something along the line.
I think it's a little too metaphorical though. Like, it's not really about people making mistakes and being redeemed for those mistakes. Like, I think on paper, there's a lot about this episode and like Angemon having darkness inside of him and then merging with the darkness that felt extremely reminiscent of Riku in Kingdom Hearts. And I think the dichotomy between Riku and Sora in Kingdom Hearts is much stronger at like presenting Sora as this like pure light boy who has done no wrong, and Riku on the other hand as being like someone who's made mistakes in his life and embraces the darkness and the light and chooses to walk a path of twilight between them, whatever. And that I think is like you're saying is a much more relatable metaphor for kids because it's like even if you're mean to your friends and you betray your friends, you can still be redeemed and like you don't need to completely reject that old side of you. You can, embrace, you don't need to ignore what you did, but you can embrace both sides. This, on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like Angemon and Devimon are actually in actions the same character. It's more like, oh, he absorbed the other thing. Okay, sure. Yeah.
I mean, and they also could have just been trying to connect, because I'm looking at the wiki now. Like, Devimon's supposed to be Angemon's species Digimon, and had become like a fallen angel.
I think in the baseline lore, he's always been like a fallen Angemon
Hmm.
or whatever. So it's fitting. It makes sense. One thing I think it is interesting how it reframes is how back when Takeru first came to the digital world and Devimon had him captive and like was desperate to get Takeru. Well, that's an interesting reframing of that now if
Yeah.
it's a side of Angemon. But
Also, remember when the Angemon's egg dipped into that water very briefly?
I don't think it actually did. I think they prevented it from actually touching.
I think it touched.
And I think it didn't touch, but also it turns out Angemon had been bathed in that miasma for decades. So I mean, the damage is already done, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, I think this episode had some interesting ideas. Didn't really land the execution in an amazing way. Some of those interesting ideas were good. There are a couple more sides to the Angemon stuff that I think is interesting, but I think they'll come up in listener questions. So we'll get to that when we do. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main things I'd say about the episode. There were other like the shots when Gabumon and Tentamon are like standing in front of the shadows and they like move away from the shadows to like show off to the viewer that the shadows are morphing. It was just so awkward.
Yeah.
It was like so egregious.
And they just like, oh, well, let me move to the side.
Like, why are you moving awkwardly? Why are you like dancing to the side awkwardly? And the camera's just sitting on the shadow. Like, yeah, there seemed like there could have been plenty of ways to like show the camera focus on the Digimon with the shadow in the background and the shadow moving away or something instead of just like let's awkwardly move to the side.
Or they could have had like them flying and the shadow casts on the ground. Like instead of following them, it eventually like diverges and
Yeah,
morphs and turns into something else instead of it being right behind them, and then they drag Tentamon's image like to the right. I think it was
yeah.
Tentamon's that looked the most awkward.
I forget. I think they may have moved. It may not have been that unnatural as they were moving, but it was just the framing of the shot made no sense. Why the camera was still just lingering on this? Yeah, it was very very awkward directing. Another sad missed opportunity is that like Taichi and Greymon see Ogremon, and there's like I think Taichi just like says the name Ogremon, but aside from that, there's no like lingering on the emotionality of seeing a shadow version of their friend who died valiantly defending them, kind of. So, oh well, I guess.
Isn't the Digimon the Aitsukakumon? Oh, that's the
Oh
English
yes,
name.
yeah. That's
Okay.
the Frontier dub name. I don't know why they changed that in particular. Maybe I mean Sephiroth would have been an iconic video game character by that point.
He's already in Smash, so.
Yeah, he was in Smash in 2003. Yeah, or four, sure. No, but yeah, I don't. So I mean, there is religious connotations behind the name Sephiroth. Like it's a Kabbalah concept, which is a how do you describe Kabbalah? A branch of Judaism. I don't think I'm describing that well, but it's somewhat related to Judaism.
It's a blue, red yarn in your wrist.
What?
Madonna.
Okay, yes, Madonna is a Kabbalist, but I don't know. Sephiroth is just one of those things that like has roots in Jewish mysticism, but also just is a cool. Sounds like a cool word to Japanese RPG designers. So it just, but at least this like Sephirothmon's physical design being a bunch of balls, like it is based on not the eye part. I think the eye part is unique to Sephirothmon, but the concept of like if you look up Sephiroth, it's a like how do you kind of like looking at molecule diagrams, like it's a bunch of circles with lines connecting them
Right.
in just the way that Sephirothmon is designed, right? Not that we saw that in this episode because he was disconnected until the end. In the ending shot, he might have been connected.
No, I think
He
they
was still just loose.
There was like 2 of them, and then they
Well,
went.
there were 2 of them, but they went to join. I'm double checking, live fact checking. Okay, so one eyeball sucks up the data, then spits into a second eyeball, and the 2 of them fly. Okay, and then it just 8 more floating in the sky. So anyway, yeah,
So they formed together off screen.
presumably. But yeah, so basically my point is the name Sephiroth could have been censored from a religious perspective, but I doubt it. It's not like Jesus on the cross that obviously would confuse kids or like alarm parents. So I don't know why they changed it to Sakaku. Sakakumon is like Sakaku means I think illusion in Japanese. So I guess they
Mhm.
one of those names where they like chose like made up a Japanese name. So I don't know why they did that in Frontier. But anyway, sorry, it's too much about Sephiroth and sorry, it's too much about the Kabbalah concept of Sephiroth and not enough about shirtless Sephiroth, which is the only kind of Sephiroth content I want.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, shirtless Sephiroth.
I wish they would have had more of the eyeballs because I remember in Frontier, like each of the eyeballs was like a different like room, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like they I think a bunch of them were trapped in different scenarios.
Right.
And then they also like it was interesting. They were fighting outside as well, and it like would do interesting attacks by like spitting out different things from each eyeball and stuff. So
And then like each as they like moved on from the room, they would like on the outside the eye that corresponded to that room would like dim. And I think
yeah,
that's an interesting visual to see as opposed to the one eyeball just chasing the dog around.
yeah. But I think the one eyeball chasing the dog is also a very striking visual. So
Right.
so it works. Let's move into 3 reviews. So first off, Joseph Nosif said that was dope.
Zed Millenniumon said Devimon Holy Angemon's glove.
Yeah, so this is something I did not actually get until we got comments mentioning it, but it's referencing the fact at the end of the episode when Holy Angemon still hears Devimon's voice. He's looking at his left hand, which is colored differently than the rest his other hand. Actually, is it his left hand? Let me fact check.
Yes, the one that's dark.
Yeah. So, so yeah. So I think a lot of people are concluding that it's like, connecting that evil or dark-looking arm to that being the Devimon side of him. But I don't know. Looking at like, because that arm has been part of Holy Angemon's design since forever, and I don't know. It doesn't look particular. Like I would understand if it had aspects of Devimon's design, but it doesn't really. It's more like armor. It's more like it's coated in armor, and it's like representing the fact that Holy Angemon is a fighter. But I guess maybe I'm thinking about it too hard, and it is kind of just visually he has a white arm and a black arm. So it's like
I mean, the rest, like his legs are also like white. Everything's white except that one arm up until like it goes to like his pec.
yeah. So I think that is like even if it's not explicitly Devimon's arm, that's what they're going for. Like I think they probably got the idea for Angemon being a mix of Angemon and Devimon from this design that is kind of about the contrast. So it's fair. Next one from at Doramon Ryutamon. Resurrect Millenniumon already.
I agree. They just a lot of episodes like we're so heading towards Millennium Mon,
Okay, that is fair.
but let's stop for our burger and then we'll get some fruit.
I agree.
And should we do a race? Let's do a race. Let's race this random bike we found.
I agree with the frustration, but I think that this episode made me the fact that we're back to a plan involving Millenniumon, and I guess I'm kind of a sucker. Like the way that the episode ended with Sephirothmon still collecting the data and flying away, like even just that tiny little breadcrumb of being connected to the general plot, I was like, ooh, I'm excited to find out what happens with that. And I know I'm getting tricked because it's probably not going to have a good payoff, but I was tricked, and I enjoy getting tricked.
They should have been collecting the data of the motorcycle from the last episode so they can hurry it up. Millennium Mon can speed up a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's the problem that they collected the habits of stopping for French fries too much.
Yes. At Golden Pelt said, Angemon self-realizes.
At Matthias FV08, is this plot? And kind of not, but kind of maybe.
At Bored Individual said, Digimon Jobber Parade.
Which I don't know what this is referencing.
I think isn't it's like the candy.
Candy. I'm on the Wikipedia page for Jobber, and I don't see candy. I see a professional wrestler who routinely loses a match.
Like
A person who engages in job production.
there's a so what I'm thinking of is gobstoppers, which are Willy Wonka candies that are like these balls.
Yeah, like like in the movie where like they're hard to chew and like they break your teeth.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. Yeah.
I don't understand the appeal of a candy that breaks your teeth. Doesn't seem smart to me.
Yeah, I agree. Their place of origin is the UK, so ask them.
So I'm not sure what this is referencing, but it's a mystery. Dak and Jax were saying Black Arm backstory.
Translation Mon said, "End of Evangelion."
Yeah, this is reference. They included a screenshot of when Angemon covered in Neodevimon's face. He's like holding his hand up to his, like holding his hand over his face and staring at the camera, and it looks very much like a shot from End of Evangelion. And I know part of it is just it's just a meme to compare everything to Evangelion, but like it's very possible it's based on an iconic shot from End of Evangelion. But also, I think this is like a pretty standard anime shot of like someone holding their hand in like brooding pain, and like, I think it's the kind of thing that's even mimicked in the Chunibyo trope. I'm trying to think of any Chuni characters you know. Isn't there one of them in the Psyche K anime? So Chuni is the characters who are like pretend like everything around them is some grand fated design. They're like the chosen one, but they're really just a random middle school kid.
Oh, yes, you said Psyche, right? There is a character like that.
But yeah, I'm just thinking like the iconic, like one of the iconic things that those kind of type of characters do is like dramatically hold their eye because they have like a special magical eye or something. And
Yeah,
so,
Kaido is the character from Psyche.
who everyone
Yes.
like hates because he's,
In universe
yeah,
or
no, in universe, like he's thought that he's like unpopular because of.
I don't think he's unpopular.
Oh, okay, well, I haven't seen much of the show,
The,
so
the dynamics of the show are a little weird. Everyone's kind of on the same level, except like the girl who everyone likes.
yeah, actually, when I look up Psyche K and and the name Kaido, I see a screenshot of him holding his face dramatically. So
Yeah, well, all of his shots are like him in a completely different world, like imagining some QAnon conspiracy.
yeah, yeah. But next three review from Andy Lucas Oe, subtle Chimeramon references, and so was kind of blindsided by this. I hadn't pieced together the obvious fact that like they're fighting Millenniumon who's formed from Chimeramon. They're talking about forming a body from lots of different Digimon. Is that something you thought of watching the episode before you saw these comments? Because you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, I did think that when they said that, it then connected. Because so I don't have like an image of Millennium in my head. I think what I've been seeing in my head, or at least I don't have the correct image. What I've been seeing in my head is Chimeramon. So it's like, yeah, they're just gonna collect all the pieces to explain this. But now that I'm looking at actual images, I do agree that they need to be collecting some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Millenniumon is a fusion of Chimeramon and Machinedramon, so
Hmm.
like, and Machinedramon is also like in the way that in everyone knows in Adventure Zero 2, right? Like Chimeramon's formed from literally taking the body parts of the Digimon. In Machinedramon's baseline lore, whatever, he's supposed to be a similar kind of thing that's like taking a bunch of machine-related Digimon and fusing them together. So Millenniumon is very tangentially connected to this idea of forming bodies from other Digimon. So interesting.
At CC Takao said, Sephirothmon was creepy.
At PDX Anime said, love Frontier callbacks.
At Austin LC23 said, technically fewer murders?
And I guess so, unless it turns out that this is how Digimon are revived in this world and they murder them all again.
Yeah, I mean, Sephirothmon does have the crest of light on the outside when he's fully formed, so this could be like the holy reincarnation area that the main boys have now slaughtered.
Okay, and final one from at Summer Buck. Bored but intrigued. That's a good summary. All right, so now moving on to some listener questions. First off, from at Joseph Snosif, is it okay that I want Holy Angemon to hold me?
Only if he holds me first.
I mean, it's always called Holy Angemon because he's gonna hold you. I'll be here all week.
They probably have a warm touch considering that their alternate English name is Magma Angemon. Thank you.
That's not even a joke.
It's close. It's one letter off. It's a
That's
pun. Thank you.
that's not a joke. You're spreading slander. But next question from at PDX Anime. While I thought this episode was really good, there was one thing that kind of confused me. Why is the backstory of Angemon and Devimon happening with the Devimon clone rather than when the original? Sorry, why is the backstory of Angemon and Devimon happening with the Devimon clone rather than when the original was alive? And will there be some dark Angemon coming if Devimon is in his head? Yeah. I was viewing it as like because Takeru at some point, or I don't remember who, maybe Angemon, some character says like, "Oh, this one's different than all the other shadows." I took that to mean like this one is literally is literally Devimon somehow, and maybe that's like each started off as a shadow, but then Angemon's like the fact that Devimon still lived in his head, you know, like like exited his head and formed into the shadow or whatever, something like that. But like I took it as like this isn't like a shadow speaking as Devimon. It's like no, for whatever reason, maybe it's just because they've had a connection because he's birthed from his own head. I found it easy to take it as like no, this is the actual Devimon speaking. It's not some fake copy or whatever. But I think the main point of the question is like totally valid, which is like why is this happening now? Why not when Devimon was actually alive? And I think it makes sense if the main thing they were going for is that feeling that I was describing, that feeling of betrayal that like Takeru at that point in the story like was just getting introduced, you know, like didn't really know Angemon, didn't really know I think Patamon was still an egg at that point, right? So like didn't have that connection. And now you introduce it because now he has a connection to Patamon and Angemon, and now it's a like in theory a gut punching reveal that this partner that he thought he knew well actually had a dark side to him. And that wouldn't have worked when he was just getting introduced to him. But even with that being said, like it's still really awkward, and it still feels like, did they like awkwardly not find a way to explain it before, and then bring it up now because they like realized it was left on the table, and they got complaints from fans who were confused, and then they factored it in later. That's what it feels like, even if it was intentional. So
Yeah, I feel like I feel it's too soon if they had did it before, like you mentioned, because we had just been introduced to Takeru, whereas now we like know them, and it makes sense that if he accepts this or takes back in this other part of his power that he had lost when he was in the miasma, it would make sense that he's now able to go to Ultimate.
mhm.
Um, Saying that, I also wonder if we're gonna actually see more of Holy Angemon because he literally has only been in like 4 episodes in the entire series, in between Adventure and O2.
Yeah, I think we might not see much of him just because of like there's not that much time left in the series, right? Like especially if there's also going to be a mega form for everyone and Takeru included.
I mean, are they going to, even if it's in the background, like
Mhm.
they like if they're in a similar and they get stuck in another eyeball and they're like, oh no, phantoms slash reincarnated spirits of Digimon again, and then they like digital to Ultimate for no reason. Will he be there, or will he still just be Pegasusmon for no reason?
I suspect that if it's just going to be all the Ultimates fighting, he'll stay as Angemon.
Ugh.
But then if it's like if he does anything big and dramatic, then he'll be Holy Angemon. But I think the thing is that like I think if this had been the plan all along, then there would have been more seeds planted before. Because there was like one or two mentions of Devonmon being like, Angemon, my old friend, and that was it. And it's like if they knew for sure they were gonna pay that off later, I think there would have been more signs about it. Like when Devimon was being defeated, he would have said something like, curse you, Angemon, or like, I'll haunt you to your last day, Angemon, or something that, like, you know, I just feel like in the moment, in those Devimon episodes, it felt like that seed was planted and then quickly forgotten about. And,
Mm.
like, if they knew they were going to pay it off later, I think they would have been more explicit about teasing it. And because at the time, it didn't feel like a thread that was left open on purpose, it felt like it was left open accidentally. So, yeah, I don't know. Is that weird execution, or is it just does that mean the plans change, or was it just bad execution? Who knows?
Who knows?
The Digimon story. Austin LC 23 had two questions. First of which was, we've seen the beast spirits of all the evil Frontier crew at this point, except Gigasmon. Do you think it'll appear in an episode? I think that's a really interesting observation because I didn't connect that. Because what we got Sephirothmon this episode. We got Calamarimon in that
Hmm.
one time when like Calamarimon was in the network. We got Petalgemon just recently, and oh god, the big bird thing that was Koichi,
The Big Bird.
Velgermon.
Oh yes, Velgramon. Yes.
So there was only five of them, right? So we've seen four out of five of them, and yeah, that's an interesting observation. Like if you hadn't pointed out the pattern, I would never have thought Gigasmon was a surefire character to appear. But now that it's four out of five of them, that is awkward. It does seem like
Yeah.
maybe.
I think that it'll probably show up, even if it's in the background or like they stop at another gas station.
Yeah, I kind of had forgotten Gigasmon's design because he's the one character that is much more prominent as his other form, Grumblemon, right?
Right.
Oh, Gigasmon. Oh, I forgot how Gigasmon is a really creepy design. It like just looks like a guy in a skin tight suit, and his nose is very phallic. And he just has like a very awkwardly prominent empty crotch area while he has this giant phallic nose. He makes me very uncomfortable.
I'm sure there's some images of that around the internet.
No. We're getting past that. Austin LCT23's second question: how do you feel this Takeru episode compares to the Pegasusmon slash Angemon ones? It feels kind of samey in the way they handled Takeru's hope. Basically, all three times Takeru stood up to the danger, Fangmon or Waramonmon, and said, "Don't give up. Do you think hope is just a difficult crest to write unique scenarios for? Because being fair doesn't seem as broad a concept as something like knowledge." I think that's like I was saying before. Yeah, I think it does kind of pale in comparison. The evolution moment in particular pales in comparison to the other two recent ones. And like you're saying that hope being a difficult quest to write for, like in the original season of Adventure, they only had 2 episodes, like that had to do like they had to have Takeru, like Angemon appearing the first time, and then Holy Angemon appearing later. And both of those episodes were like almost entirely framed around Takeru being the last hope. Once everyone's been defeated, and they
Yeah.
think they've lost the battle, Takeru is like magically able to save the day. And I think both of those scenarios worked really well in Adventure. Like especially the last one when everyone's been turned into Piedmon's little the
Keychains.
keychains. The keychains were so good, and that moment where like Takeru and Akari, the last ones left.
Kari's plummeting to the ground, screaming, and TK just looks his keychain. Is like, "Wow, I should do something. Look at this cool keychain. It looks like my brother. Wow!" And then in the background, Kari is just screaming because she's plummeting to her death. And he's like, "Look at this keychain. God, what keys can I put on this? I don't really have keys because I'm a little child, but."
Well, I think she should have known what she signed up for. She chose to come to the digital world. It was on the she signed the contract.
She was the only one who chose to come to the digital world.
They all kind of chose to come
No,
back though.
they went to camp.
They all chose to come back.
I mean, the first time.
Well, anyway, so yeah, I think the original show handled that both times pretty well. And in contrast, we've gotten in this show gotten 3 Takeru-focused evolution episodes recently, and they've all been a little bit like, "Oh, okay, that's a cool idea," but not as knock it out of the park as those original 2 in the original show were. I think so.
Yeah, I think at the amount of episodes that they've gotten in the past, anything is better than nothing.
Okay, so you like just having more screen time, whether the episode itself is actually that great.
Yes,
Hmm.
because like you said, you like the first Angemon episode in the original was just saving everyone, and then the Magna Angemon, like this, like the very first arc all the way to the last arc. It's like or second to last arc if Pokemon, and then it's like, oh, also I'm gonna save you all again. And it's like, okay, but we never get to like use it, or we don't get more from that. Whereas this one, it's like, okay, we're gonna give you an episode where he comes in as Angemon, then he's gonna turn to Padmon, a really strong Padmon, and then he's gonna be an egg, and then he's gonna be back to Padmon, and then it's gonna be Pegasusmon, like, and then we get Angemon again, and then Angemon actually digivolves in like not in the end of an arc episode. So there's at least something. I don't know. I do think the hope could be handled differently than Don't Give Up.
Yeah, because it's nice to get the extra screen time. I think that like even if it's a harder thing to plan around, like I think it's a more interesting concept. Like some of the other quests are so generic and so bland. Like friendship, yeah, everyone. Like the whole show is about friendship. Like they're all learning about the friends they met along the way, right? So like one character just being about friendship doesn't really make sense. Courage, they're all courage.
I mean, Yamato has a hard time making
Well,
friends.
yeah, okay. So like that's the twist they add on the right that he friendship doesn't come easily to him. Right.
He's always had that though. That even the original,
Right.
he always was wanting to be on his own.
But my point is that like the other attributes, even knowledge, like it's kind of weird that it's like all Koshiro does is spout knowledge. So like, why is some knowledge worthy of this big emotional catharsis and not others? So I don't know. I just think Takeru is like hope is actually a pretty interesting concept to write around compared to a lot of the other quests. But anyway, Attack and Jackster said, "This was a really cool way to debut Magnanimon. He had to face his dark side and accept it as part of himself to grow stronger. Lots of interesting ways to interpret that. Do you think this reveal of Devimon's true nature was always planned or decided retroactively?" And yeah, we kind of speculated about this earlier. And I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I think it was an idea they had in their hat. They maybe had to scrap it for time before, and then came back to it and was like, okay, we never got to explain that. Now let's explain it later. Now that we have some more time. Maybe thinking, maybe my theory.
Mm, yeah, I mean, this also could be. I think this was planned, always planned. It just maybe not planned as best as it could have been.
Yeah, like I think it's probably the way they're connected was probably always planned, but how they revealed it, I'm thinking might not have been the part that was planned.
Because the only connection they have is that one line. 'Cause what is the line? Doesn't he say something like?
I think he refers to him as like Anjima, my old friend.
Right, right, right. So it was put there, and I think if they had put it there, they had planned to do it, and I think they always were going to come back to it as a way to get Holy Angemon, and it makes sense to like get stronger by accepting that side of himself.
Yeah, the thing that makes me hesitant about insisting it was always planned is that like it feels to me a lot like, and you see this a lot in manga where a concept will be introduced very early on in the plot, but in a vague enough way that the author doesn't need to set any details firmly in stone, which makes a lot of sense when you're writing a sprawling epic that changes over
Hmm.
time. Like I think semi-famously in One Piece, there's an early, I don't remember how early, but like in the world of One Piece, there's a concept of the seven warlords of the sea, and at least for like the first, how long has One Piece been running now? Like 2 decades. So in the early stretch of One Piece, the seven warlords is this big concept, these big like most threatening things in the world, and when they're first mentioned very early on, it's just as shadows, and so he doesn't have to reveal the designs yet because that's something that like if they don't show up in the series for like 5 years later, like that gives you time to like gestate on better ideas and stuff. And even so, some of the characters that eventually show up definitely don't match those silhouettes that were mentioned early on in the series. So like this to me feels like that, where like Devimon saying Angemon, my old friend, could be any of many different things. And so this my sniff test, it feels like they weren't sure which one to go with yet. So they planted that seed, which could have been any number of things when they got down to actually explaining it.
I mean, Gatomon also went through the exact same like acceptance and transformation to get her ultimate because remember she was like going to
Uh,
attack Kari and she had like the
it,
black eyes and the whole imagery of what form is it? Nightmon, Sir Nightmon, Dark Nightmon?
It was more about, like, getting over the fear of and the trauma of being that role before, I think. It wasn't really about, like, embracing that side of her. It wasn't, like, about, like, there being a personality associated with it. It was just, like I think it was more like the fear of becoming that again. But, yeah, it is pretty similar. So, I don't know. Okay, this is a pretty interesting question. Zed Millenniumon asked, "Is anyone else starting to fear for Commandamon? He's had a few close calls already, and we're going to need a sad Digimon death like Waymon, Peximon, or Leomon to establish the threat of Millenniumon, or has he been around too long to die now?" Um, so the thing that makes me hesitant about this question, first time I heard it, I was like, oh God, if they killed Commandamon, like that would actually be really tragic in a way that I didn't think the show was capable of. Like, I didn't think the show was capable of establishing connections with the Digimon in a long term way that could pay off in a tragic way until I thought about Commandamon. And it's like, oh God, that would actually be extremely emotional.
Right.
But the thing that makes me hesitant is that like we have gotten sad Digimon deaths. We've gotten Gargemon, which I think worked mostly pretty well. I think most people found that pretty emotional. There's some more I'm not thinking of, right? Because I think the big two ones are Gargemon and Petalgemon. Ogremon as well. Ogremon.
Did Ogremon die?
Yeah, he got stepped on until he died.
Oh,
You don't even
okay.
remember him. Wow. That one wasn't like so much like pondering the long emotional moment. It was more like, oh, rip to my bro.
Well, both of those are calling on to characters that the audience already had a connection to from the original series. They weren't like a
Uh
new Digimon that was just introduced.
I guess so. Gargemon, I think, is a little bit of a stretch because yeah, Gargemon did exist in Tamers, but like, I don't think it was like an emotional character like Ogremon.
Oh, I was thinking Andromon.
Well, Angemon was the one that killed him.
Right, but he was in the episode as well and also died.
Yeah,
Are they dead though? I thought they were like another
who knows?
forest.
I remember everyone insisting that of course he's not dead, of course he's gonna come back, and it's like I don't think he's coming back. But anyway, Petalgemon I think was the big one where it's like this is in a Kari episode, it ends with Kari crying about how sad she is. Like I'm worried that that is how the show is treating the Wizardmon equivalent, that it was Petalgemon.
Paildramon was already on his way out from the beginning of the
Well,
episode.
yeah. So if they expect that to be this big emotional moment that fans remember for generations, that's not what's going to be. And I think we were discussing about this off mic yesterday, but like I don't want to linger too much on thinking about Kalanamon dying because if it does happen, I think thinking about it in advance too much will take away from the emotional gut. Like I think it would be such a gut wrenching moment if it comes out of nowhere. So I think it would be kind of a shame to ruin that moment by thinking about it and plan like expecting it a lot. And I think that's kind of like the problem that happens with Leomon, where like the first time Leomon died in the franchise, it was hugely emotional and it was like left a huge impact on the rest of the series that it was in.
And the next time he died, and the next time.
But now it's just a meme, so it can't really carry emotional weight because everyone expects it coming. So like,
And he also has only been in like 3 episodes this season.
well, yeah. But so like, Kamado would be the perfect character to actually have that gut punch moment. And if we expect it and see it coming, it's not going to have that. And on the flip side, if it doesn't happen, but we keep talking about it and expect it to happen, then it'll just be disappointing. So
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing theory. Very good. I don't want to think about it though. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I would like the show to reach that kind of emotional writing if they did,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
We'll see. So next question, we're starting to run kind of long, so I'm going to summarize it. But Andy Lucas OE basically brings up a lot of interesting points about Angemon and the like interpretation of of a Christian angel, and specifically like the like biblical view of Satan as an angel who said that it's unfair that humans have freedom to choose their roles, but angels and seraphim are destined to serve and don't get a choice in that, and that it's like maybe that's the kind of thing they're going for, that that Angemon Devamon is at least tempting Angemon with the idea that like the children are a curse on them. And I think that's an interesting connection. I wanted to bring up that just like I think that framing of Angemon being tempted by the idea of Devamon saying that the chosen children themselves are a curse, that Angemon could have supreme power or whatever, and the chosen children are weighing them down. I thought that was a very cool idea, a very cool concept, a very cool temptation. And Andy Lucas, he mentions he thinks he's overthinking it, and I think that might be the case because I think it felt like that's the main thing the writers are going for. This is a cool idea. Let's show it off. Has some connections to biblical readings, kind of, but I doubt there's any tons of intent behind the connections there.
I think Devimon's basically just trying to say you used to you didn't need the children before, and now you are like dependent on these children to do anything, whereas Anjumon is just flipping around saying no, we're actually growing stronger together.
Hmm.
It's not like I'm not dependent on them. We're doing this together.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But it does also confuse me that like the at least early on in those like that episode where Leomon was there and Leomon was fighting, what was it, like Minotaurmon, the one who like had heard that Devimon had a new power, and I guess even earlier in the first info dump when that angel bird was talking, like there were hints at human and Digimon partnership being something beyond what they'd ever seen before, and kind of aside from those hints, everything we've seen before is what the Digimon did the first time around as well. So is that a plot thread they abandoned, or is that intentionally going to something that's not going to come to fruition until the final arc of the show? Although now that I think about that, that new thing is probably just a Megamon. So hopefully there's
Mhm.
more to it because we saw a Megamon in episode 2. So hopefully there's more to that than just the obvious thing that we could have guessed in episode 5. But anyway, so penultimate questions from at Doru Ryudamon. Is the Vandemon cult going to just try and keep the kids away from the crystal site now? And probably they're probably going to be an obstacle. The kids roll up and murder swarms of Vademon, I'm guessing. And then the other question at Dora Rudamon asked was, do you think the shadow data from that green egg thing stole from Agumon will be used to give Millenniumon the Machinedramon cannons from his Dark Evolution? And I was gonna say probably, but Agumon's Dark Evolution and Machinedramon did not have cannons, and that is the one part of Millenniumon's design that retains Machinedramon's visuals. So I don't know.
I mean, they could just take like the aggression from that memory and did yeah, they even show them fighting Machine Dramon.
Yeah, it could just be the concept of Machine Dramon. So this is where I'm going to say there are things I can't say here. If you
Okay.
want spoilers, stay tuned to the end of the episode. We'll discuss the titles for upcoming episodes that have been released. So teaser for that. And final question at Z Millennium asked, Try warned us to fear the reboot. Sorry, Try warned us to fear the reboot in movies 3 and 6. If you had 66 episodes to tell a story in the canon of the original adventure Zero Two Try and Kizuna, what story would you tell? Daigo and Maki, Rio and Ken, Midquel, Zero Two Epilogue Kids, or the Global Digidestined? So Eric, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think it would be really interesting to get an original story about Daigo and Maki in that group.
Like the whole
Because
group, not just the two of them?
right, the whole group, like their adventure of the original Digidestin, or at least the first group. I'm not are they original or are they first group? They're first in comparison in relativity to
What do you consider the difference between first and original? Those are
well,
synonyms.
I don't know. I can't remember whether or not there are like multiple groups of children that are being called to the digital world to save it every time because in Adventure it was framed that Tai in the group were like the first ones. But then it's like, oh, we're not actually the first ones. There was a group before us, but was there a group before Daigo and Maki's group? I don't know.
I think the implication is no, but also even the existence of Daigo and Maki technically contradicts information from the original adventure. Like I
Right.
think in the original adventure, the info dump episode where War Grandma and Metal Grandma are fighting and they're interrupted. I think in that episode it specifically says that Homeostasis got the idea to make chosen children from the battle in Hidden View Terrace or Kargaoka.
hmm
So like the fact that Daigo and Maki predate that doesn't really make sense with the original adventure. So
I mean, they could happen right before that. I mean, how
mm,
old would they be?
they would have been too old.
Oh,
They would
okay.
have been like in college or in high school at least.
How
late high
old is it?
school.
Daigo seems very young to me.
I
He
mean, but
seems like
that
25.
that only happened like 5 years prior.
Okay. But I think it would be interesting to hear that story, and so that it can give more context to the Tri movies, especially if we're going to be contradicting a lot of stuff that was told in Adventure. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to contradict it, at least flesh out the idea more and give more context to that.
Yeah, I think it would have been that might it's hard because with the question, like, if you had 66 episodes, like, could that original team have carried I don't think they could have carried a whole 66 episodes. I think you could have maybe, like, I think they would have been that would have felt egregious to the fans if, like, the original Adventure Cast got 50 something, 54, and then Daigo, Maki, and Co. got 66. That would have been sacrilegious.
Maybe divide it into like make it like Digimon stories and make it
Yeah.
23 sets of 22 episodes or something like that. Where like, okay, a set amount of episodes can provide background to this situation, and these episodes now can provide information about this situation.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, like, I mean, it's hard to know how much because, like, Try did not tell a complete story. It left things hanging in the end,
Oh, here we go
and,
again.
could that like, that stuff could that have been an interesting angle? I don't know, I don't think it could have carried an entire season or an entire season this long, and, so I think, yeah, I think, like, the original kids are the biggest intriguing mystery. Like, I am partly kinda curious what it's like for the kids of the cast, like the 0 to epilogue kids.
Hmm.
But I just think those tell the story about the kids who are basically just like visually and character-wise clones of their parents is not that interesting.
Isn't that what Harry Potter and
Cursed Child
yeah,
and Boruto and kind of Korra Last Airbender. Not it's not called Korra Last Airbender. It's called Avatar: The Legend of Korra. But I just all of those narratives share a kind of like you thought this hero was so great. Well, actually, they were a crappy dad, and it's like cool, I guess. Like I don't, I like Legend of Korra. It's fantastic, but I just think it's a kind of depressing narrative. And it's like it's interesting, it's realistic, but I don't know if I want to see a series about how Taichi's a bad dad or something. Like
right.
um, so I don't know. It's hard to, especially framing this in the context of the original canon, because I think like so much of that canon's already been filled in, and it's like I want to see new and exciting things, and I don't think of my mind doesn't naturally go to like where to fill in the new and exciting things, like because potentially if you're good at writing, you can fill in new and exciting things at any point in the original canon. As long as handled well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Rio and Ken might have the most fruitful time. Like, if you're going to set it in the Rio and Ken time, then you can feature you can feature the Adventure Kids in between the two seasons. You can feature, like teases of the 02 kids, like, and maybe you could actually make Rio interesting. So maybe,
Or
I don't know.
yeah, I think it would be interesting to have the Digimon stories and then just have episodes that if you're watching, like basically rewrite the chronological order of the episodes where like, okay, you can watch season one and then you can watch these episodes to get some background between these characters before they appear in season two and just fill in gaps like that.
Yeah, but also like I don't know. There's a ton to fill in about like the 02 kids before 02. It's like they would have been even younger. Like we don't need to see like Daisuke or Davis when they were Takeru Takeru's age. I don't know. So I think it's a tall order for a series this long to actually have enough narrative content to justify it. But that's interesting to compare to this season because it's like, has there been enough narrative content to justify these many episodes we've gone so far? 46 so far? I don't know. Kind of not really. But on that note, let's get to our closing thoughts about this episode. I think that overall it had some cool ideas, but was, just an okay episode and just an okay evolution, which is kind of sad and disappointing for such an evolution that was so iconic in the original series. So I think I'm gonna, give it 3.5 stars for that little bit of interesting ideas kernel, but not much more than that.
I think I like the episodes. I do agree that they had a lot of issues, and it is kind of disappointing that like they could have did more with like this iconic evolution. But I also am a sucker for any like Angemon content and TK content, so I did enjoy it. And any screen time that Digimon literally is only in 4 episodes in the entire series overall. I think 4 episodes, but right. But so I did appreciate the the screen time. But yeah, I think I really have to wait until the end of however many episodes this new season's going to get before I can tell like how bad or good this episode was. I feel like it's gonna tie in somewhere because you don't just bring Holy Angemon and then never use him. So is he only gonna show up again to defeat the baddie at the end? I don't know. So I'll do 4 stars, I guess, just because of Holy Angemon.
You're like, oh, it wasn't a good episode, but like,
Well, I didn't want to get 3.5 because like I like it more than you, but I don't think 3.5 is describes it properly.
yeah. I mean, at least I know you don't like me comparing things to Try, but I still feel frustrated and burned by the last Try movie that featured in the teasers. And I guess this isn't a complaint about Try itself; it's a complaint about the teasers and trailers for Try. But like the fact that A. Devimon showed up in the last Try movie, and in the teasers we saw like Devimon show up and Takeru's face be like, "Oh no, Devimon! Oh shit!" And then it like was such a non-existent moment in the movie and it meant nothing, and it was just like a random Devimon. It wasn't even the Devimon that well, I don't know. It's unexplained. Was it that Devimon? Who knows? It seemed like it wasn't. So this I was worried would have the same impact. I was worried it would be like, oh no, we're fighting a Devimon. Oh no, but it gave us content. It, like compared to that try, that like that moment in try that gave us like I was pumped when it gave me nothing about the Devimon Angemon interaction. This one actually gave us something, so A plus for that. But you know, if we compare everything to try, then everything looks like A plus material. So.
Hmm?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Sorry, I was trying to remember in the original when Angemon defeats Devimon. I remember he when they're both like disintegrating, Devimon has like a whole speech. And I was trying to remember whether or not he says anything that is like, you'll never get rid of me. But it's actually the opposite. He says, like, you may have defeated me, but they're stronger Digimon. What are you going to do when you come up against them? So,
I mean, I think I actually said, "You'll never take Kyrie's heart."
oh boy.
I remember that Angemon, when Angemon is fading away, he says to TK, this is just the English dub thing, because it's like about the nuance of how it's expressed in the English dub, but he says like, TK, I'll come back if you want me to. And it's like, why is he so passive aggressive?
Well,
Like,
he's like, maybe he's unsure of where he stands with TK. It's like, if you want me to come back, I can come back.
I would have been like, ugh, this Angemon's too needy.
Uh,
He can stay an egg forever. Well, on that note, who's your MVP this week?
I'm gonna give it to Takeru because in the past episodes that he's been featured in, he's been like he does come around to like embracing the hope, but he does like falter before, or he has moments of faltering and not being as confident. Whereas in this one, when as soon as Angemon like starts to turn dark and go towards him, he is like he's not moving at all. He's like, I'm not scared at all. Like I know we're in this together. So I thought that was very nice to see. So I'm going to give it to him.
I mean, some people would call that a either a lack of character or a lack of animation, but I'm glad that you can see the positive in it. So,
Oh,
um,
where is he going to run? Where's the eyeball?
I mean, as they say, this is a Taka RuPaul's Drag Race, so
Oh boy.
I'm gonna give it to Devamon because
Uh,
he deserved it. No, actually, I think I like the idea of him tempting Angemon with the idea that like the chosen children are a curse. I think that is a really cool concept.
you mean gaslighting?
It's just different perspectives. And I
Mm,
think when I look back at this episode, like bird's eye view,
Bertramon's eye view.
the thing I like about it is the fact that Devamon is a side of Angemon. So I think it's fitting to give the crown to Devamon this week. And then we all know that TK Devamon was the true pairing. But yeah, looking ahead to next week, episode 47, the villains of the Wastelands. Seems like Taichi's gonna storm a group of outlaw Digimon and then make a grand plan with this Nohemon Digimon, which has appeared in the anime before in Tamers, I believe. And they are the Scarecrow Digimon with a weird face. And if you are not aware, that weird face is I don't think we have any English language equivalent, but it's basically a simple face to make for Japanese kids because it's made with a bunch of different Japanese characters. Like it's a no character, a no character, a she character, and a he character. Like the nose for the eyes, the she for the nose, and then the he for the mouth. So that's why I think it's called like Nohe Nohemon. So it's called the Hen no Moheji. But I forgot that the whole thing usually is contained in a G character. Anyway, that's what's on his face, and the fact he's going to be the star of this episode is weird because I think he's just been like a gag character before.
Because now when you said that they were going to be outlaw characters, do you think that I'm trying to look at the name? Is it Sheriff Mon?
I don't think the one that's the gun.
Yeah, the gun.
No, I don't think so. But
Okay.
maybe it's possible.
Deputy Mon
Yeah,
or Revolve Mon in
Revolmon.
Japanese.
I hope
You
not.
don't think he's gonna be the
It's
villain?
possible, but I doubt it.
Okay.
Also, it seems like it's going to be the animation debut of. They haven't said the name, and they haven't. We only saw silhouettes in the teaser, but this Digimon called Atama Dekachimon that it seems to be some kind of fanfare based on the Twitter reaction. But so it's basically like Agumon with a giant head, basically. And that comes from the fact that the name Atama Dekachi means giant head or big brained kind of. But I tweeted about this and like when you because Dekai means large,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not named Atama Dekai, it's Atama Dekachi. And I was like, okay, what's Dekachi then? So I put into a Japanese English dictionary Dekachi, and one of the first results is Dekachin is a giant penis. So that's not what this is based on, but
All the images I'm finding of a Tadakachimon are like a big Agumon Agumon with a big head, and then inside his mouth is a smaller Tachikachimon,
yeah,
and then on
apparently it's
his
like
mouth is another one.
there's a mini Dekachimon that is inside the Atama Dekachimon. So that seems like a cool design. And this is an interesting. Apparently, this is like a. Was it a design contest winner? I think. Anyway, interesting to take these like funny characters and bring them into Digimon. But so I think it'll be a interesting episode. I don't know. It's kind of like this is the most. There's very little content to judge on from this teaser, so I don't know. It seems like it's gonna be episodic, focused on Taichi, which isn't promising, but bring it on, I guess. Definitely the most the least I've been excited for a new episode in a while.
Oh,
Not, I mean,
what
like
about the burgers? Do
there
you
has
like
to be
the
one.
burgers?
The burgers I was super excited for. Jagamon Potato Hell, bring it on. But yeah. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the show. Remember, this episode was brought to you by the giant green moon in the sky. Do not question a giant green moon in the sky. There has always been a giant green moon in the sky. Everyone loves the giant green moon in the sky. Last week's Digiprompt was, what two Digimon would you want to see compete in a deadly high-speed race? And my favorite response came in from Drew Softman, who said Mercurymon/Marukimon versus Rinkmon. And I did not know this, that apparently both of them are listed as being the digital world's fastest Digimon, which cannot both be true. Someone has to win this race. I just find that so bizarre that Rinkmon I understand being described as the world's best Digimon. He's a Digimon made of ice skates. But Mercurymon/Marukimon is like, I get that his namesake is Mercury,
Well, Mercury isn't. It's called Quicksilver.
yeah, but I think it's more the Greek god Hermes. Wait, no.
Oh yes.
Wait, sorry. Mercury is the Roman god. Hermes is the Greek god. And like known as like the fastest of the gods, whatever. But I never pictured Marukimon or Mercurymon as being a fast Digimon. It's just he's like a giant animal kind of Digimon. I don't know. It seems like a weird thing. So yeah, I want to see them race. But this week's Digiprompt is, what Digimon do you wish had a Dark Shadow version, and how would you make the Dark Shadow version super edgy?
Give it bangs.
Yeah, just give them bangs, like Avril Lavigne kind of bangs, or
Yes.
she had bangs, right?
Yes. I'm pretty sure everyone had bangs in the 90s.
Oh yeah. Send those responses or general feedback to podages@gmail.com, to @podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on podages.com. Share the podcast with your friends who won't give up on you even when they find out that they were the ones that kidnapped you and were holding you in amniotic fluid for a while. And it would be awesome if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, and each review helps a ton. If this is your first episode, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you find podcasts. Erik, thank you so much for coming back on the show
Thank you for having me.
and being the only person who will defend Takeru.
Okay. I'll see you in the hallway of the apartment after.
And I am definitely Jeff on Twitter. You can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It a Wee Bit, where we recently had an episode on Idolish 7, which is a very good anime. And upcoming, we are picking shows to cover for what season is it? Spring? Is it spring? Yeah.
I think summer doesn't start till June.
Well, yeah. In terms of anime seasons, spring started in April and ends at the beginning of July. So yes, spring anime season, we drafted picks. Also, we'll have an episode on To Your Eternity soon. Anyway, check that out. And thank you everyone for listening. I'll be back next week to talk about episode 47, The Villains of the Wastelands. Bye.
Bye.
And remember, never stop visualizing.
終わりなんかないぜそうさって
at CC Takao said Sarathmon.
Sephiroth. It's
Sephiroth. Okay.
the shirtless guy with the nipples. Okay, so now for the spoiler talk, we're going to be talking about these titles for episodes 48, 49, 50, and 51. And I'll have a link in the show notes where you can look it up if you want. But now we're in the spoiler zone. So, I so it's hard to talk about Machinejimon or Mugenjimon without being like, yeah, Mugenjimon's going to show up in 2 episodes. And it's like, what? I don't know. When I first saw that, I was like, what the hell? But why is there going to be another Mugenjimon when I thought in this universe Mugenjimon was just a thing that Agumon turned into by mistake? But now that seeing everyone responding to like, like Sephirothmon combining data and stuff, I'm like, I mean, maybe Sephirothmon's going to combine data and make a Machinejimon body. Mugenjimon body.
What do you keep saying? Mackendramon?
Mugenjimon is Machinejimon's name in Japanese.
Okay, I was like, what are you saying? Also, where does that say that in this?
Episode 48, Mugenjimon's attack.
Okay, I was like, okay, gotcha.
Why are you not saying that?
Well, I'm used to saying Machinejimon, so I was like, what are you reading? So should we say what we're reading first?
Yeah, okay, so episode 48 is Mugenjimon's attack. Episode 49 is The Evil God Descends Millenniumon. Episode 50 is Finale, The Ultimate Holy War, which made me concerned when I first read it, because it's like, oh, is that the end of the series? But then there's episode 51, The Mystery Hidden in the Crests. So it seems like the series is not ending at episode 50, which is good, I guess. That would have been really rushed. But it seems like they defeat Millenniumon in a couple episodes.
Wow.
So I'm not sure
I guess
what's going on.
they did get the data from them, the motorcycle. They did speed this up.
It's like, oh, we should. Oh, it seems like they're dragging their feet, and it's like, oh, there's only like 5 more episodes. Will they drop it all? Like, what? This feels like it's gonna come out of the blue completely. Especially since next week, it seems like next week is just another dilly dally shilly shally episode. It seems like there's just some random scenario with some random Digimon, and then like the next episode is gonna be Mugenjimon and Millenniumon, and I don't even know. So it's weird.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem that we're gonna get megas until after this is taken care of, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Like, yeah, that's the weird thing that this throws off. That I expected that Metal Gurumon was gonna be mixed in with all the others, but it seems like no. I guess. Huh?
Oh, I just read one. Interesting.
So we're kind of like trying to avoid reading the synopses too much because I just worry that if we know everything in such detail, then it takes away the fun from the surprises. But
yeah, in my mind, I'm already like, oh, does that mean this and this is going to happen? That's probably going to happen like this. Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, even as a kid, I remember before seeing the finale of the original adventure, I had read plot synopses online from the Japanese airing, and the plot synopses for like the first couple of episodes of 0 2. So like I think there's still tons, and I still found the finale adventure emotionally satisfying and a big deal. So it's like, if it's done well, it can still be surprising and fun, even if you know what's going to happen. But
I'm interested to see what will happen after Millennium is taken care of, because it's supposed to be just like 15 episodes left.
But this is also what was frustrating about Devimon is that it was like Devimon was hyped up and hyped up and hyped up, and then it was like, okay, now they're fighting him out of the blue, like it came out of nowhere, and then they just beat him, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's it. And it seems like the same from Millennium. It's like he's been hyped up even more than Devimon, it feels like, and then it's just gonna be like, okay, now we're fighting him, and now he's gone.
15 episodes of Myosmon.
You think it's gonna be Myosmon now after that?
Maybe give him another form.
I just don't know where you go from Millennium. Like, in terms of, I thought Millenniumon made a ton of sense to be the ultimate series-wide bad guy, because in the context of the meta franchise up to this point, Millenniumon is one of the biggest, like, in terms of power creep, whatever, like, it's like metaverse spanning in terms of like threat level if you're going by various canons or whatever.
And I also feel they haven't set up the Reds or like hints of like someone after.
But that's also during the Devimon arc they hadn't either. The only sign we got was once Devimon was defeated and Dark Knightmon took the crystal away.
I thought there were like hints that he was taking orders from someone else.
Well, I mean, there were hints during the fight that like he was talking through a like weirdly radio-esque voice, which I still don't. I guess now is supposed to be a sign that he was Angemon somehow, maybe. I don't know if that explains that. It's gonna be like, I'm definitely excited by this weirdness of this. Things are coming out of the blue and me moving on to something else.
Well, maybe it's 15 episodes of Pokemon.
Oh god, it's just 15 episodes of him not getting the crust and everyone else getting pizza.
Why do you get 50 episodes and I get the tail end?
I don't know. It's weird times. I mean, it's also possible that it isn't going to be 66. That was still a preliminary data point that isn't that reliable. But Definitely seems like they're more than 50 now, but I don't know. I think a lot of people also the fact that they're like there's an episode title about the crests is surprising people, but I'm not too surprised by that because I always thought that they could at any point retroactively start to explain the crests.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably how they're gonna give the other kids mangas by like, oh, did you know your quest is love? Like, if you start focusing on love, maybe something will happen.
Yeah, I think that I thought it made a lot more sense for this kind of show where they aren't too focused on character motivation and characterization in general to have it play out and then later tell them, by the way, your crest is friendship, and that's why it activated when you were showing friendship, as compared to like the type of arc we got in the original show where Sora knew that her crest was love, and then she like had so much doubt about it because she felt like she wasn't living up to her crest and all that stuff.
Maybe they'll have figured it out in this one when they like see them and they're like, you know what? That probably means courage.
Actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if Sora actually knew her crest.
Yeah, her whole thing was like, mine's love. No one loves
I think
me.
mechanically how they would have known that. I think maybe Devimon told her. I just know there are some dub shenanigans where characters in the English dub mention crest names long before the crest names had been revealed in the Japanese version, and I forget if Sora is one of those. So I'm not sure. It's been a while.